Okay, guys, welcome back. Like I was saying, I want to do just the first half of this lecture series today. So, in the last lecture, we went over the first pillar of the Madisonian model, the separation of powers. What we're going to do to wrap up the second one today is we're going to be talking about the checks and balances pillar of the Madisonian model. Now, again, you can kind of see at the top, Madisonian model continued, so that big bullet point is supported by the one that's underneath it, number 2, the checks and balances. Now, again, I have a feeling that you're at least familiar with some of these, but I do want to go ahead and give you guys some examples of what the founders created to be certain they could limit government power so that they could reduce this fire. First thing what they said is each branch is going to be independent of the others. It can do its job really without the other two. In doing so, they have their own separate powers. Now, I'm going to start with this one because this is one that can kind of be used to really incorporate all three branches, called the Presidential Veto. Now, again, you might have heard of this before. In order for a bill to become a law, as I was explaining in the last lecture, it has to be voted on in the House and in the Senate. It needs 51% of the vote in the House in order to move on to the Senate. Now, it can go either way. It can start in the Senate and go to the House or vice versa, but it also needs a majority in the other House. So if a bill gets 51% of the vote in the House, it goes over to the Senate. If it gets 51% of the vote in the Senate, it goes to the president for him to sign. Now, if he simply signs it, that bill becomes a law. But the president can veto it. He can veto a law where if 51% of the Congress approves, he alone can deny it from coming into existence. Now, this is definitely a check on the power of the legislative branch. They wrote out the law, they wrote out the bill, they voted on it, they passed it. On his own, the president can stop their action. Now, in order for there to be checks and balances, Congress does have their own power against the presidential veto. Congress can override a presidential veto. Now, it is going to be harder for Congress to override a veto than just pass the bill. Just passing it and sending it off to the president for his signature only takes 51% of the vote. If you're going to override a veto, it takes 2/3 vote. It takes 67% of the vote in both the House and the Senate in order to override a veto. Now, I will tell you, of course, it depends on the president and the Congress, but basically on average, presidential vetoes are overridden about 4% of the time. It doesn't happen very often. It's tough to do, but it does take place depending on what this bill is. So in some instances, when a president vetoes, the Congress can override. That checks presidential power, where Congress basically passes this bill on their own. Now, that's kind of a classic example of checks and balances between executive and legislative branch. There is one particular power that the courts have over both branches. This is called judicial review. Now, we'll get into it more as we get to constitutional law, but what judicial review basically says is the courts have the power to interpret the law, to say what the law means. And also, the courts are the interpreters of the Constitution. They say what the Constitution means. What the judicial review power is it can take any law that has been passed by legislative branch, signed by the president, and say, this law is unconstitutional. This law goes against the protections of the Constitution. If a law is in direct conflict with what the court says the Constitution means, that law becomes null and void. It's thrown out. And it's the court that gets to decide what the Constitution and the law means, which means they have the power to take a law passed by Congress, approved by the president, and simply throw it out. Now, you have to understand, this is not a step in the process of a bill becoming a law. This is a separate process. This is after a bill has become a law. If someone takes that law to court and challenges it, it's up to the court to determine if that law goes against the Constitution. If they believe it does, then all that work by the legislative branch and executive is thrown out as the court deems what is constitutional and what is unconstitutional. Now, like I say, this is going to wrap up what we're going to cover today for the first two legs of the Madisonian model. When I see you guys in the future, we're going to talk about the other two legs of the Madisonian model, as those are going to be a bit more complex.